Hi again then guys, and so we've got another special projects replica build for you today, and in this particular replica we're replicating McLaren's entry-level model, if you will, the 570S, a car which I actually quite like. I'm not a huge fan of McLaren models in the more modern sense in general, but the 570S makes sense to me. It's a car which, as I said, is the entry-level McLaren. It makes it more accessible to a wider range of people, and I like the fact that it does a lot with less power. That appeals to me, I respect that. Now, obviously we have to use the MP412C to replicate this car. It's not that similar to the 570S in terms of design, but at the same time, it's not ridiculously far off. It does have a similar shape to the 570S, it's just the details themselves are different. Now, as far as the visual look, we have made some changes, not to the body itself, but primarily to the wheels and the colour of the rims and the body. And there is room for personal variation, of course, because it is a production model, but we'll quickly go over to the visual tuning garage just to run over the colour options and rims that I've gone for. Then, of course, we'll go over to the mechanical tuning garage for the replica build itself, and then taken out to a track, of course, to see just how it performs. Now, as far as the body modifications, I haven't actually changed anything on this particular car, and for the rims, I've gone for these rims, which are Oz NV5H rims. Now, they're not entirely accurate to the real car, however, the real 570S, at least one of its rim options, is a 10-spoke arranged in a twin 5 arrangement, as you can see here. 5 lots of 2 spokes in a kind of a star shape, and these are about as close to that as you can get on the game. Now, you could go for different rims if you want, but those are the ones that I've gone for because they don't look ridiculously far off, even though they're not completely similar. As far as the paint itself, we've gone for a solid colour for the body. Now, as I said earlier, this is a production model, of course, so you can choose pretty much whatever colour you want. To be as legitimate as possible, you could stick to McLaren colours, but I've opted to go for a lime green because that's one of my favourite colours on the 570S, and the particular green that I've gone for is Verde Mela, which comes from the Lancia Stratos, so it is a pretty expensive green if you do want to go for that one. As you can see though, there are of course other lime greens and also completely different colours in general for whichever one you want to choose. And as far as the rims, I've gone for black because it tones down the rims, makes them less loud and also more similar to the actual car's rims. I've gone for Crystal Galaxy Black, which comes from the SLR McLaren from Mercedes. Again, an expensive black, so you don't have to go for that one. That's just the one that I opted for. And with the current setup that we have not painted the brakes because they are still stock. So that's overall for the visual look. Now let's of course go to the mechanical garage for the tune setup. Now, as always, of course, I do like to make my builds as PP relevant as possible, and thankfully this one is at 580 PP. Now, I've gone for sports soft tyres, being, as it is, more of a street-based production build. As far as the brakes, as I just mentioned, we've left those stock to make it feel more authentic. As far as the suspension, we've got the ride height on 100, front and rear. For the springs, we've actually lowered the stiffness to make it a little bit softer. A little bit on the front to 825 and quite a lot on the back down to 1025. The dampers and anti-roll we've left on 3. We've got neutral camber and tow because you just don't need them on this car. We will come back to the gearbox in just a second. We've left the flywheel and clutch stock for the same reason as the brakes. Now for the diff, you've got a couple of options. The steering on this car is a little bit towards being more of an understeer kind of car. I personally prefer that. Now, if you want it to be even stiffer than this, you can raise that initial torque to say 30 or even 60. If you want the car to be a little bit more loose, then of course you can increase your acceleration and braking sensitivity. So it's down to personal preference there. As far as the power, the actual car runs 562 horsepower. So I've, for that, done an intake tuning upgrade, mainly to round it off PP wise, and also an oil change, then reduced it down to, of course, 562 horsepower. Then as far as the weight, there are different weights quoted. Some put it at around 100 kilos heavier than this, at around 1415. That seems a little bit ridiculous for this car, and the general consensus is that the curb weight is 13 kilos, so that's what I've gone for. In order to get that, you want a stage 1 weight reduction with an 85 kilo ballast, and in order even to make this as accurate as the real car, you want to put that 34% towards the back, because the actual car has a 42-58 weight split. Now, as finally for the gearbox, you want an auto setting of 236. Then we are running the real gear ratios of the 570S, and those ratios are 398, 261, 19, 148, 116, 91 and 69, with a final drive of 33, or 3310. So that's overall for the gearbox of the car. A very long gearbox compared to what you'd probably expect given its power, but obviously in real life it's a gearbox which is used more to allow you to get through those gears better and have different torque levels rather than just pure top speed, which is generally what we associate that with on the game. Overall, that's it for the mechanical setup though, so now of course let's take it out to a racetrack to see just how it performs. Now overall, of course, this car is not quite as quick as, say, a 650S or the MP412C, but it is a very, very fun car to drive, and the fact that it does have a little bit less weight and significantly less power than a car like this would usually have actually means it's more beginner friendly than an exotic would usually be. Overall, it's very fun to drive, and that's coming from someone who is, as I said, not a huge fan of modern McLaren cars. So if you do decide to use this replica, obviously I hope you find it fun and potentially even competitive at around the 580 pp level if you choose to race it. And that's it overall for this particular build. So if you'd like to keep up with other replicas like this, as soon as they're released, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.